have a impromptu, spontaneous Facebook Live, and it's been forever since I think I've come in here and talked to you guys, and I'm sorry that it's been so long, and I've missed you, and I've been super crazy busy with all kinds of things. I've been working with the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, and also working with the girls at Independent to do the Military Spouse Wellness Summit that is going to start here in 2 weeks. And so I've just been crazy busy and couldn't necessarily just jump in here and interact as much as I usually do. And so I wanted to touch base because I got a really good question today. And that person who asked the question might join the group this week, but it was a really good question that I get a lot. And I thought it would be a really good discussion for us to have in this group. And the question that I normally get is how to build your mental health career and how to creatively do that as a military spouse. And so I want to share with you a couple of things that I like to share with people, not at all as if that's the track that everybody should go on, but I want to share with you what I normally share with people, just in case some of you would agree. And if you disagree, maybe you have some other things that you can advise people on as well. But I would say this is the number one question, because as military spouses, we're all over the place. We're moving all the time. We're trying to build our careers creatively. We have these work gaps. It's just really frustrating. So now that I've been practicing for probably, 15, 20 years now, I'm just going to share with you my personal journey and how I have done that creatively, in case it encourages you or inspires you in some way, and you can pick up a few tips on that. So the first question I normally get is I'm sure you guys get this in this group all the time, which educational academic track should I go down? Should I, especially in the counseling realm, so should I be an MSW? Should I be an LPC? Should I be an LMFT? Like, which one should I do? And I think it's kind of crazy and frustrating that we have that many options to begin with, but we do. And so I am an LPC. Some of you guys are LMFTs, which is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and a bunch of you are social workers. And so I'm going to probably butcher this, but please have grace on me as an LPC. But I am going to tell you what I kind of view as the difference between the three. And you guys can feel free to chat in and share a little bit more and expand on that if you'd like to. But as an LPC, the educational track is a little bit more counseling specific, about the counseling relationship. So a lot of the educational academics that you're going through are on counseling practice skills, really building that relationship and doing mental health in the counseling office. And that the relationship is more important for the overall mental health well-being. And then I would say LMFTs, marriage and family therapists, have extra classes that obviously talk about family systems, marriage work, the family as a whole. To understand the individual, you have to understand the family, which I also agree, but that's kind of a good overall, I would say, summary. And then I would say the social work track also can do counseling and values the family and marriage and all that, but they also bring in a component of understanding how important the community is to the overall health and mental health of that individual or couple. And so all three of those can do counseling if they get a license to practice. All three of those can be in a counseling office doing counseling, but they're educated from different perspectives. So that's number one. I just want to be able to at least explain to you that whichever track that you go down, if counseling is your overall goal, that any of those tracks can get you there. Now, I will tell you that in the military, if you're wanting to work with military members, families, that sort of thing, keep in mind that the military right now tends to really love social workers and LMFTs for some reason, and LPCs for some reason didn't get as much play. Now, I personally have not had any problems getting a job or working with the military. Nobody ever asks me, do you have, a social work degree or an LMFT? That's the only way we're going to have you work with our service members. So I have not been blocked in any way as an LPC for that. But if you're wanting to work in the system, they tend to like social workers and LMFTs a little bit more as far as that degree program. Now, the next question that usually comes from that is, does the choice of school matter? And I think Ingrid, is on here with me, and she would agree that the biggest thing that we're finding right now is that your school needs to be CACREP accredited. That's CACREP accredited. And that's really, if you're going to work with military, for sure, that they want your school to be CACREP accredited. Now, I will tell you, as long as it's CACREP accredited, I think you're good no matter what degree program you go or what school you go to. I personally got my master's degree at a seminary, and I love the fact that I got mine from a seminary. I wanted to have the religious faith component, the spirituality component, to match the counseling skills that I was bringing in the office. That was just my style. And for those of you who really do want to have that education and value is as a person of faith, and you want to be, I don't necessarily advertise myself as a Christian counselor, but I will tell you, for those of you who want to have that component, I will say that it has really done well for me to market myself as I've navigated and gone after jobs, because there are very few people out there that can do what they call competent Christian counseling or faith-based counseling. Now, can you be a person of faith and still do faith-based counseling? Sure. But what I find as far as people hiring therapists to work in a practice, they really valued that I had that and brought that to the table, because there were so many people around literally the counseling table in that practice that were people of faith, but they felt better about referring somebody who specifically wanted to really focus on their faith in mental health to me, because I had that seminary degree. So I'm not saying you have to have that, but I look back and I'm so glad that I personally had that, because that's what I wanted. And it's been a really great tool for marketing. So the other big thing that I wanted to address is I also get the question about internships and how important is internships and experience. And this is what I usually advise people on when it comes to experience. Does your internship matter as far as where you do and what you do? Yes and no. It does not matter if you are struggling to find an internship and you just need to get your hours in and you are hitting roadblocks all over the place. At some point, really just get your hours in. Like, find a place to get your hours in, especially if you're moving all over the place and you're struggling with that. At some point, you really just need to check that box. And it's not going to ruin your career if you do something as an internship and decide to go a different direction in your career after that. But if you can do an internship and get some experience in something that you are passionate about, that is absolutely, hands down, 100% an amazing idea for you to do that. Even for those of you who are like just now thinking about going into school and you're just trying to find a job on the side or something like that, every single one of the jobs that I did from pretty much undergrad on had something to do with people or counseling or whatever. And I will tell you, before actually, while I was in my graduate degree program, before I needed an internship, I remember we were broke, like full on broke. And I went through the Yellow Pages at the time, and I called every counseling practice in town and left messages on their voicemail. And I said, I don't care if I just have to clean your toilets. I want to work in your office. I will file papers. I will answer phones. I will clean your toilets. I will make coffee. But I want to work in a counseling practice so I can know what it is to do counseling and make sure I'm going in the right direction, but also so I can pick up some things and pick up some skills and things that I need in order to do this career. And I did that. I did that for a while. I filed papers, I made coffee, I greeted people when they were making appointments. That's what I did for a very long time. But what I learned from that was how to file things, the right paperwork to have, what atmosphere makes for a really good practice, right? When you're able to serve coffee, when you're able to make those people comfortable, what made them uncomfortable? All of those things mattered, and it made a difference in my career of how I would treat people and welcome people into a practice. And so any job that you do, any volunteer work that you do matters, especially if you can volunteer in a way that will add to your resume and add to your overall profession. So if I was for a while when I couldn't work, and I was staying home with my kids, my volunteer time was I was volunteering my time to not necessarily counsel other military spouses, but I made myself available and said, I have the skills, I have a little bit of experience, I definitely have the compassion. If you need somebody to talk to in the FRG, if you're just having a bad day and you need somebody to talk to, or if we had soldiers that were killed in action. I volunteered as a care team coordinator so that I built up our volunteers who would respond to a mass casualty. So that's where I put my clinician skills, my experience, all that counseling experience. I really invested it into my leaders so that they knew how to take care of those spouses if they were going through a really horrendous moment, so that we wouldn't have people saying the wrong things at the wrong time and really upsetting somebody and saying things that they shouldn't. So even your volunteer time, think of it like a job that it's going to go on your resume, because guess what? When somebody looks at your resume, nobody asks how much money did you make. Nobody asks for your salary. They have no idea if it's volunteer work or if you worked that job. It's the same thing when you finally get those credentials on the end of your name, LPC, LMFT, whatever. I love that moment. And I try to encourage people when they have that moment, when they finally get to sign their name with those credentials. Nobody knows how long you've had that degree. Nobody knows how long you've had those credentials when you finally did all that work to get licensed. Nobody knows. They just know that you're licensed. So act like you're that expert, and be that expert, and be confident in who you are and what you have to deliver. Don't worry about, can I do this job? I just got my license. Am I going to get it right? Am I going to get it wrong? Are they going to think that I'm experienced enough to help them in their profession? They don't know how long you've been doing this job. For all they know, you've been doing that job for 10 years. And so we kind of have to fake it till you make it. You go in and you go, you know what, I got this. I did the schooling. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do this job, and I'm going to love every second of it. So same thing with your volunteer work. When you're able to say, you know what, even when I can't work, I'm going to either volunteer or I'm going to get a job in an area that I'm passionate about that will help me go in the direction that I'm wanting to go. So for me personally, I did those behind the scenes jobs in a counseling office. I did volunteer work as a care team coordinator. I did, for a while there, I was like an administrative person for a while at group practices, that sort of thing, just so that I could learn, even from an administrative perspective. If there was a clinician that wasn't easy to work with, I don't want to be that person, right? I want to know what it's like to be on the receiving end from the boss, so that one day when I'm the boss, I know how to treat my staff, right? So your internship matters, your volunteer work matters, but I would say be creative and make sure that whatever it is that you're signing up to do, that it feeds into like this funnel of your resume. So it's going down a path. It doesn't have to be perfect. I would say, same thing with your papers in school. If you have to write a paper, make it something that you're passionate about. When I was in my master's degree program, every class had a paper, and they didn't really care what topic I chose. I just had to choose a topic. And so I made every single topic about trauma. I made every paper about some kind of trauma, sexual trauma, service-related, military trauma, so that by the time I finished my degree, I could say I'm an expert in trauma. And I get to say that because I've been writing 10 papers on trauma from various angles. So really be creative and think about the direction that you're going, and it doesn't have to always be perfect. So just to take a quick break here, I'm looking at Jessica is saying all of her volunteer work is on her resume. Ingrid is saying that her volunteer and her CV has tons of volunteer positions so that the gaps were filled. Yes. If you have a work gap, then use that volunteer to fill in. It looks really, really good. Starlet is amazing. She's our huge helper on this page. And she wrote for a financial counseling space. There's an article that she's linked to read on that. So I want to just remind you that it is okay for you to funnel all this experience and passion. Now, I'm going to tell you, even once I got my degree as a military spouse, bouncing all over the place, you have to give yourself some level of grace and flexibility in the kind of experience that you're going to get. So for example, every time I've moved, I've had a different group of people to work with, and it wasn't necessarily by choice. So I had intentions the whole time to work with military families, but that's not always what I got. So when I was at Fort Stewart, when I finally got that license, I had nothing but military spouses for a whole assignment. The word spread that there was a military spouse. You know how I'm always telling you guys you're unicorns. By the way, I don't call you guys unicorns anymore because now it means something different. And so I still think that you're unicorns. in that you are unique and you have something so amazing to offer your practice or your job or your employer. And that's what I meant when I said that. But this is why I say that to you guys all the time, because when I was at Fort Stewart and I got a job at that practice, word spread on the installation that there was a military spouse who was a licensed counselor. And I think I got all of them. I had a 6-month waiting list just because military spouses were looking for another military spouse that understood them. So when I tell you guys that you are a unicorn and that you should be confident and go in for those jobs and those interviews knowing that you are worthy to be hired, I mean that. You have something to offer. And use mine as an example. Go in there and say, here's the deal. If you guys want good marketing, I'm a military spouse and I get this culture, and people will flock to your practice when they know that you have somebody who is culturally competent. And that's what I'm here to offer you. So, and that season I got nothing but military spouses coming to me. It's like I got like a PhD in military spouse, and that's actually where a lot of the stuff that I did as military spouse of the year came from that season, where I was able to say behind confidential doors, this is what military spouses are struggling with. So that was that season. Then I moved to Augusta, Georgia, and guess what? I didn't get military spouses at all. All I got was teen girls. It was like all of Augusta just needed a counselor, specifically a Christian counselor that could address teen girls. And I, again, had a 6-month waiting list because nobody was wanting to work with teen girls. And so there is some element of look for what people are needing. What is the community that you're in looking for, needing? And are you willing to kind of jump into the deep end and say, you know what, I may not be the resident expert on teen girls, but I'm willing to jump in and become that expert. And by the time I left that practice a 1.5 years later, I was the expert in Augusta on teen girls. But there was nobody. Oh, hold on one second. My kid is locked out. I'll be right back. Hold on. That's so funny. Sorry about that. Okay. So just because you're not an expert doesn't mean you can't become one. And so I dove into that topic and I really decided, how do I find out everything that I need to know on how to succeed with these teen girls, because that's what Augusta needs. So I created a support group. I created a program. I created materials for parents, a newsletter for parents so that they could be encouraged. I did whatever I could. And by the time I left, people were coming to me saying, how do you start another teen girls group like this? And I didn't sell the program. I gave it away when I left because I wanted it to succeed. And now, like 3 or 4 years later, that program is still going, which is awesome to me. And I knew nothing about teen girls when I got there. So, and you guys can do that too. By the time I left Augusta, then I think the next place we went was to Fort Jackson, and where the military spouse of the year stuff started happening. And then I, over time, started to realize I've got to figure out, how do I do this job in a way that can cross state lines so I'm not reinventing myself every time. So everything that I invested in and still continue to invest in makes sense in that funnel. Right? I'm going to say no to the things that don't necessarily fit in. I'm going to say no to the things that, like if it's not mental health related or in line with my mission statement, I'm more likely to say no on that, because overall it's going to direct your path. So here's the big takeaway that I'm trying to encourage you guys in today. Does your internship and your work experience matter? It's not going to make or break your career. So I want to encourage you guys in that there are going to be seasons where you're going to be doing something and you're like, I don't even know how this fits in. Like right when I got out of my master's degree program and like got like thrown into the world, like before I even had a license and my post-master's experience, I had my supervisor, who was a brilliant man. I had an opportunity to work in a residential home for women out of prison for substance abuse. And I didn't want to do substance abuse. I wanted to do trauma. And yes, that's in substance abuse work, but I really just didn't think I wanted to do substance abuse. And I took it to my supervisor and I said, I don't know what I should do. Should I take this job or not? And that's the question that some of you are bringing to me and bringing to each other. Do I take this job? I don't know if I'm really interested in it, but it's a job. And he said to me, you take what you can get. There are seasons in your life that you take what you can get because it's going to direct you somewhere, and it's experience after all, and it's a job. And there are going to be seasons where it's slim pickings. And I took the job, and it was one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. And I would, in some ways, go back to it in a heartbeat. I absolutely miss those women that I worked with out of prison. And it absolutely shapes me today when I'm working with a service member, or when I'm working with a couple and they're struggling with a substance abuse issue. I pull from that experience, and I pull from what I learned from that, and I've got it in my kit bag. I didn't know then that it was going to be in this funnel, and it was actually going to direct my path and add to, but it definitely does. So is it going to make or break your career? No. And if you get a job or you do some volunteer work that doesn't make sense with your career, you don't even have to put it on your resume. You don't. You can do a job. I mean, I don't put on my resume that when I was 14, I worked at Chick-fil-A. Love Chick-fil-A. My son's probably going to get a job at Chick-fil-A, but it doesn't help my resume, right? So if you have to get a job and it's not going down the path that you want it to, then you just don't put it on your resume, but it helps you through that season. So it's not going to break your career. But if you can be creative, and if you can make sure that everything goes down that line and adds to and builds on itself, basically your experience will define your success more than your track, your academic track, more than your internship, more than that paper you wrote. When you get to this place, when you're 10, 15, 20, 30 years into your career, nobody's asking what school did you go to, which counseling track did you do, and where your internship is. Nobody's asking that. They're asking, what is your experience, and are you an expert in that? That's what they want to know. They want to know, are you fully invested in this, and have you been working on this for a while? So I just want to encourage you, take those tiny steps, and those tiny steps do add up over time, but don't stress so much that these moments right now are going to make or break me. Does that make sense? So just a quick encouraging word to you guys that I care about you. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for all of you that are going to be building this career over time. Some of you have been making some great comments. Jessica, again, newsletters at my job at the animal hospital. I write mine all the time on military working dogs. Oh, that's such a great thing to put in your resume. So good. And it's still in line with that military mindset, isn't it? So you can be able to say, I have some level of expertise on that because I've been doing that for a while, and I've been writing that content. And that's an added skill, isn't it? I'm working on my newsletter now. It takes a lot of work to do that. Starlet, knowing your values are so important. Knowing your why and how it will help your yes and no's is more impactful. Yes. So I don't want to keep you too much longer, but this last thing, based off of what Starlet is saying, if you haven't watched, Starlet, who is that guy that did, I think it was a TED Talk that did your knowing your why. It does the concentric circles. But your why is more important than your what and your how. You have to know, why am I doing this? What am I most passionate about? And you have to know your why. Your why is actually what defines your mission statement. And we all need a mission statement. I've actually been thinking this week, it's time for me to rewrite my mission statement, because I have evolved as a person. I've evolved in my career, and I'm passionate about things in a different way. It's time to re-examine my why. And if you don't know what your why is, why am I going to school? Why do I want to do this internship? Why do I want to try to finish this education when this lifestyle is making it too hard? You have to know your why. Once you know your why, then you will know your how am I going to do this, and what is it that I'm going to do? But it all stems from your why. And yes, Starlet, thank you so much. It also helps you say no to the things you need to say to, because why am I doing this job? I'm doing it because I want to heal people. I want to be a part of their story. But I'm going to say no to the things that don't involve that, because it's going to take me away from my why. So Starlet, thank you so much for saying that. Thank you for Jessica and Ingrid for making some comments in here. If you guys have more to add, I'm going to encourage you to add to this comment thread. But I wanted to answer that because that's the number one question I get is, how important how much does this matter? And I will say, overall, when you look back, your why, based off of what Starlet said, your why is what really matters. And if you can make decisions based off of your why, knowing who you are, what you love to do, and what you're about, that's what's going to make a difference. So I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.